Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Industry Uncovered podcast series here at Charles Aris Executive Search. My name's Eric Spell, and I'm one of the vice presidents here at the firm, and I lead our agriculture and food practice. And I'm so excited today to have Liane Hart, co-founder and CEO of Verility. This will become evident throughout our conversation because I'm looking back in time. Early in my career, had exposure to artificial insemination in the swine industry. So really excited to have you, Liane. If you would, I'd like for you just to give you the floor for a brief introduction before we get started.
Thank you, Eric. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Verility. We're a reproductive diagnostic company that focuses on both ovulation detection and semen analysis in livestock. And more specifically, we're going to roll out to the swine market here over the next year as we start to launch our product. I actually grew up in southern Indiana in a town called Columbus. I went to Purdue University and received my bachelor's in animal sciences and a master's in animal breeding and genetics. I worked for Elanco Animal Health for about 17 years across the company. And in parallel to that, along with my husband and I, we own and breed our own thoroughbreds for racing.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
So, Liane, sort of walk through this podcast series is focused on emerging technologies in the ag tech world. You certainly have an interesting story. So, add on to your intro. Tell us how the technology evolved and how you started Verility and where you are today.
Sure. So when I originally was introduced to this technology, I was just leaving Elanco and going full force into the thoroughbred racing industry. And I was working to become an assistant trainer at that time. And I was approached by a contact at Brigham's Women's Hospital in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They had just finished validating the technology for semen analysis. Basically, it was a mobile device to be able to have men to look at their semen samples at home versus an in-clinic setting. And they said, does this have any animal health application? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely it does. So we brought that on, formed a company and brought that forward, validated that in the swine market and boars for semen analysis. And then in parallel to that, Brigham's Women's Hospital had actually validated the use of the same technology for ovulation detection in humans. And then we brought that on and have recently validated that in the swine market for sows. And so we're real proud of that. And we're bringing that forward into the swine market just now, just kind of starting our foray into conditioning the market, gaining awareness, and just starting those relationships.
So I know in recent months you've gotten some innovation exposure and recognition, and also in your fundraising activity at Verility. Maybe just touch on where that is, Liane, and then we'll proceed on it.
Sure. So we actually first started out, as many startups do, as bootstrapping. And then we won our first award, a Purdue Ag Accelerator Award at the end of 2021, which gave us an award of about $100,000. And then in 2022, July, we closed a Series A $3.5 million round. And then subsequent to that, they've added an additional $500,000. So we've secured about $4.2 million to get us to where we are today. We're looking to close a $12 million Series B round later this year. And so that's what we're seeking to do right now.
So exciting.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, Liane, in talking about the livestock industry, if you can talk particular to the swine industry, if you'd like, given that's the target industry you're going further with, what are the most pressing challenges facing the swine industry today?
So I think even just across species for livestock breeding and reproduction, in a nutshell, breeding animals at the right time with the least amount of semen doses, labor, and costs that result in positive pregnancies and positive birthing rates, as well as trying to breed for the best quality animal, is the most challenging thing you can do. Breeders are constantly weighing decisions and balancing the ability to deal with many complex business needs. So they're breeding productive and robust animals. They're constantly trying to maintain health and nutrition to adequately protect and fuel that reproductive system. They are dealing with across the board environmental exposure, such as heat stress. We're kind of just starting down that road right now. And they're trying to maintain good labor, managing data and trying to act on that, trying to deliver a product that the consumer desires from an eating experience and preference, and then also dealing with regulatory implications. So they're doing all of this while trying to protect their current margins at the same time as adopting new technologies. And so that's a lot for producers and their teams to deal with. On our land, pregnancy rates are highly correlated with producer profitability and food sustainability. And it can be pretty difficult to get these animals pregnant, all things considered. In fact, depending upon species, up to 50% of the time they're not getting pregnant. And that results in lost productivity and revenue in the billions and significantly can affect our food supply.
So it wasn't that many years ago where 20, 22 pigs per sow per year was a good achievement. And here we are experiencing some highly productive units yielding 30 pigs per sow per year.
Yeah.
How is your technology? How's that going to come into play, Liane? Will we be breeding fewer animals? Will there be a smaller groups? What impact is it going to have?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're able to allow the producer to come in and breed with less semen doses and get improved reproductive performance, and then also deliver that return back to them. We demonstrated in our POC studies a 1.6 return, which seems to be right in the sweet spot of what they're asking for. And so if you look at that, the main thing that they're going to get out, because we're going to allow them to start to tap into a part of that breeding population they normally don't, which is the non-standing heat pigs. And so we're going to improve that reproductive performance there. And because of the decrease in semen doses, we're able to use those highly more prolific genetic quality boars because of just less semen doses.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes sense. So in other words, we may, instead of doing 3 matings, we may just do 1 or 2 matings.
That's right. That's
Got
right.
it.
Yep, absolutely. So we're getting them down to 1 mating and having still improved reproductive performance with getting into that non-standing heat, part of the
Awesome.
cohort.
So what are shifts in technology, regulation, or market demands that are reshaping the swine industry as you continue to press forward?
So these shifts are born out of having a shortage of veterinarians, time, and labor, while also working towards consumer demands and dealing with tightening regulations. While I acknowledge the government's tightening of these regulations, it's also crucial that they exercise restraint to allow market dynamics to function in order to avoid unnecessary interference and allow businesses to run more freely, I think. Regardless, we find ourselves continually needing to adopt practices that minimize health interventions. And so what that means is we need to breed more robust animals, which we've been doing since the beginning of time. So the techniques like artificial insemination, embryo transfer, genomic selection, gene editing, those all allow us to select and make animals better with better growth rates, feed efficiency, disease resistance, and carcass quality. In the past, phenotypic selection and artificial insemination really allowed us to come a long way and progress our genetics. However, now we're using embryo transfer, DNA selection, these CRISPR technologies, which has even kicked us even further into gear. For example, take the new PRRS-resistant pig that academia originally developed and PIC licensed and further developed. Those pigs were recently deemed low risk to the consumer and received clearance by the FDA early in the year. It was back in March. People have been trying to crack that nut for a long time because it's a very serious and prevalent disease. But not only did they do that genetically, they were the first ones to figure out how to navigate our regulatory system for approval. So good for them. Kudos to them. What they also did for everyone else is establish a playing field for how to achieve gene editing approvals under regulatory scrutiny. So that's a pretty big deal for our livestock industry. However, we continue to need even the simple things, and we're starting to bring those technologies into the barn just now. One, technologies that don't require skilled labor. 2, conduct basic administrative tasks in a faster digital way is really what it comes down to. So as a quick example, we are starting to use digitized animal tags that work with remote monitoring systems. So I call it having a GPS in the barn or a find the pig kind of technology that tells us key information about the animal or if the producer needs to conduct some sort of intervention for that animal. Another really cool technology that I was just reading about last week is our newest industry animal health ag tech unicorn called Halter. It's a find the cow in the field technology. In other words, it sounds really simple, but it's taken a long time for us to get here. So they can, these technologies can be real tough to develop as startups, but it's happening and we're doing it. So in a lot of ways, we're coming really far with advancements in tech and their use in the barn, but we're still trying to work on the basics at the farm level, which will allow integration of new technologies to pony off of each other for even greater adoption.
We appreciate you listening to the Charles Aris podcast. For even more valuable insights in the agriculture industry and other recruiting trends, don't miss out on additional Charles Aris blogs and newsletters, which can be accessed via the link in the description.
Awesome. Liane, I'm going to go slightly off
Okay.
script here. You've been through an interesting journey with now you're stepping out to raise additional funds to scale and grow the business. As you've interacted with potential investors, what are some things that you've learned over the last year or so that were surprising to you?
From investors, I think that they are very much demanding of very similar to a animal health strategic. They're looking at the team, they're looking at the technology itself and the application in the field. They're looking at the, value proposition. It always has to have a value proposition for the producers. It has to be real world proof. And then they're actually looking at, can they bring that in? And I'm thinking of the strategics now. Can they bring that in order to, effectively go to market with that technology? And so investors are looking at these technologies and saying, okay, can I get an exit off of this? And is it worth the input that we're going to put into this to get an exit? And so I, used to sit across the table from startups like myself while I was at Elanco. I was in a position called new product planning where I would build business cases and we would look at the regulatory timelines and what the implications were. We would look at R&D, we would look at commercial, we would figure out what the market share would be, what the margins would be. And we put all this big picture together and then make the determination of whether or not we wanted to acquire it. And when we would do that, it would be very typical of a corporation to say, okay, it's not just an idea. They have data behind this. It may not be a lot. It may be a smaller proof of concept, but there's something here. And so they would look to bring that in. Now, with these ag tech startups, it's tougher because their systems aren't quite set up for these type of technologies. And when I say there, I mean the strategics. Their systems are more set up for, feed additives, antibiotics, hormones, those, typical type of products that would come from a pharmaceutical company. And so when I look at potential exits, there's a very small handful of strategics that are welcoming ag tech type of technologies. And then you're going to have to look even beyond that with companies like in my world, what are those burgeoning companies that are actively developing and distributing and selling ag tech reproductive tools? And so I'm looking at all of them. But yeah, so I think that the tables have gotten a bit tougher. The strategics are waiting for more of I guess you would say a more of a statistical package, if you will, of data behind your technology, and have you infiltrated the market enough where it looks like it's kind of starting to take off. Whereas previously, you didn't have to have, all of those milestones checked that you do now. So we're having to hang on to these technologies longer, or basically just building it as if you're going to enter the market and you're going to be the manufacturer and seller of the product.
Well, it's really impressive where you've come in a short period of time. I know it may not seem like it, but it
Thank
really
you.
is. So one last question, Liane. What's one piece of advice you would give your younger self, given the journey you've been on?
Well, I would say that all of those, what I thought jobs that were bad, are going to mean something in the future. So all those jobs that, you go home and you go, why am I doing this? Or this is not me. I don't feel right in this job, or I don't feel like I belong. I would say to myself, learn everything that you can while you're there, work very, very hard, learn from everyone around you, don't burn any bridges, and stick with it until the end. I would tell myself that you are building to a very important outcome. And so I've looked at my journey and what I've been able to pull from all of those roles as building to an outcome. And that's what I am in right now. I don't know if I could do this role without having done everything I've been doing in the past. And I mean, these kids that are coming out of school and just starting these companies and rolling, again, kudos to them. I don't know that I could have done that coming out of school. I personally needed more experiences in the animal health world, in the business world, and now I'm getting this solid experience in the startup world. And you gotta, there's a lot to it, and so I wouldn't have been able to do it coming out of school like they have. But if they can do it, that's great. But I needed a little bit more experience.
Having flashback to my days as a trainee on a 1200 South Fair to Finish unit. I certainly could not have. I was asking myself that question, what in the world am I doing? But I certainly couldn't be placing vice presidents and C-suite
Yeah.
executives leading pork enterprises today like I do. But had I not had that experience, so yes, that's very good. Liane, how could individuals, if they want to learn more about your business and your organization and your team, where can they
So
go?
you can go to our website, which is just Verility CO company, so verityco.com. You certainly can look us up on LinkedIn. Verility has its own site, and then I do as well. Feel free to message. I always try to get back with everyone and try to give back to the industry. This is an industry that has given me every single paycheck I've ever had since I was 14 years old. And so I want to give back. And I love this industry, and I'm happy and proud to be a part of it. So if anybody needs any help with mentoring or anything like that, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Great. Well, to our listeners, thank you, Liane, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing what happens over the next few months and year or so with Verility and your
Thank you.
team. If our listeners want to learn more about our Industry Uncovered podcast series and everything ag tech and what's happening in emerging technologies, go to charlesaris.com and click on find the agricultural practice, and you will find this podcast. So have a great day. And Liane, again, thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining
Thank
us.
you very much.